Shake-up at Homeland Security as migrant children are moved back to troubled Texas facility. Washington: a widening scandal over unsanitary conditions for children at a U.S. Border Patrol facility in Texas sparked resignations, replacements, and last-minute vote wrangling Tuesday as the Trump administration and Congress scrambled to respond to a crush at the border. The acting head of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, John Sanders, announced his resignation amid growing outcry over reports that more than 300 children were held in a remote Border Patrol station in Clint, Texas, with insufficient food and water, and were left to try to care for one another. The Democratic-led House approved a $4.5 billion bill late Tuesday to provide funding to address the humanitarian crisis, but not before threats from progressive Democrats to oppose the measure resulted in last-minute changes to strengthen protections for migrant children. The House bill ignores the White House's request for additional enforcement money, garnering a veto threat from administration officials and opposition from congressional Republicans. The Senate has been in a closed-door meeting with rank-and-file Democrats on Tuesday morning. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, D. California, urged lawmakers to come together around the House bill rather than be left with no counter to the measure from the GOP-controlled Senate. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, R. Kentucky, showed no appetite to consider the House bill. On Tuesday, however, Trump blamed Democrats for what he described as efforts to block the emergency funding. Trump said he was He added he did not ask Sanders to step down, but said he knew the change at the top of the agency was coming. The president and Sanders' departure from the agency, charged with overseeing ports of entry, temporary processing of migrants and the Border Patrol, prompted another shuffling of top Homeland Security officials. Acting immigration, Trump once fired Morgan, who was Border Patrol chief in the last months of the Obama administration. Trump officials, Morgan will inherit a widening problem following the reports of unsanitary conditions at the Clint station and others. But Tuesday, a Customs and Border Protection official confirmed that 127 of the migrant children transferred from the Clint station were subsequently moved back. When asked why the children had been returned, the official said it was because there was no word on whether improvements had been made to the facility in response to the reported conditions. Progressive Democrats were able to secure several changes to the original House bill that would institute reforms, such as new requirements that the federal government establish care plans for people in its custody and replace contractors who fail to meet care standards. It would also provide. Even with the changes, several Democrats said the bill does not go far enough. But they suggested this. Lawmakers are hoping to act this week, before Congress leaves for a week-long 4th of July recess. Children. On Sunday, volunteers in El Paso tried to deliver diapers, soap, sleeping bags and stuffed animals to the Clint facility, according to Abigail Selden, a Washington-based entrepreneur who purchased the items to be delivered and described herself as a concerned The donations were rejected, she said. Trump administration lawyers argued in court last week that the government shouldn't be required to provide migrant children in its custody with soap, toothbrushes, towels, showers, or a full night's sleep inside facilities like the one in Clint. Border Patrol officials have not responded to questions about conditions at the Clint facility from the Associated Press, which was the first to report on the situation. In an emailed statement, Sanders stressed in a telephone briefing for reporters early this month that the agency was dealing with the largest monthly total of apprehensions at the border in more than a decade. Attorneys who visited the Clint facility last week said older children were trying to take care of infants and toddlers, AP reported Thursday. Some had been locked. Last month, Sanders appeared at a news conference with senior Lindsey Graham. Children O'Toole and Haverkern reported from Washington, Tennessee Fisk from Houston. Times staff write, visit the Los Angeles Times at
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.